So I asked ChatGPT to give me the most 25 useful sentences in Japanese for someone who goes to Japan for the first time. So let's take a look at those sentences and find out where you can use those sentences and if they're even correct. Excuse the different environments and the kind of bad sound quality, but I'm taking the video on the go, so let's just get right started with the 25 sentences. So the first 3 sentences that ChatGPT gave me are konnichiwa, ohayou gozaimasu, and konbanwa. And if you already learned Japanese, you should know that those are the 3 words to greet someone in Japanese. So to say good morning in Japanese, you say ohayou gozaimasu. To say good evening, or let's say good afternoon first, you say konnichiwa. And to say good evening, you say konbanwa. But maybe when you go to Japan and you get a bit closer to someone, people will not use that sentences that often. So maybe you will meet some person in the same age as you, or some person that has let's say is a bit closer to you. They will say some things like yo or yaho. So just keep in mind there are different ways to greet people in Japan. But if you're your first time and you're talking to people that you're not that, how to say, close with, like strangers, then those 3 sentences are perfectly right. So, well, ChatGPT did the right thing for the first 3 sentences. So the 4th one is arigato. And this is maybe a problem for someone that really goes to Japan the first time, because as in many languages, but I think especially in the Japanese language, you have polite form and impolite form. And as you may have noticed in ohayou gozaimasu, it is the polite form. But if you want to say it impolite, you just say ohayou. And in this case, arigato is the impolite form. So I see it often when I was in Japan, that when people went to a restaurant or when people wanted to thank someone in Japan, they just said arigato. And of course, people will know that you're a foreigner, but it can make them a bit uncomfortable because they're not that close to you. So I would recommend to you, if you want to thank someone in Japanese, always use the gozaimasu form. So arigato gozaimasu. And with this, you cannot make anything wrong. So even if you're a bit too close, even if you're close to someone, you can just say arigato gozaimasu and will be fine too. But the other way, by just saying arigato, it can be a bit uncomfortable for many people. So just watch out for this one. And as a counterpart to arigato gozaimasu, you can say sumimasen. So you can say excuse me or sorry. ChatGPT here also translated this as excuse me or I'm sorry. So let me give you some context. When you say sumimasen in Japanese language, it is often used in a similar way as arigato gozaimasu. So for example, when someone does something for you, when you ask someone to, for example, get you a souvenir from the shop, or you say, can you give me the souvenir on the shelf? You can say, sumimasen, arigatou gozaimasu. So kind of like, excuse me or I'm sorry, thank you for giving it to me. So Japanese often use sumimasen and arigatou gozaimasu in one word. Or for example, when you go somewhere and someone holds the door open for you, you can say this phrase too, like sumimasen, arigatou gozaimasu. Or you can just say sumimasen. But that is the kind of way sumimasen is used for. So you can say it for being sorry, but in Japan, when I was there as an exchange student, I heard it more often in connection with arigato gozaimasu. So the 6th sentence is eigo o hanasemasu ka? In English, you would say something like, do you speak English? But for me, at this point, it's kind of, I don't know, like a useless sentence for someone that doesn't know that much Japanese, I would say, because you ask the Japanese person, eigo hanasemasu ka? And they will say no, and what will you do then? So to give you a tip for this situation, or maybe if you notice that the Japanese person has problem with English, let me give you a tip what else you could say in this point. So for example, when someone speaks Japanese to you, or you don't understand their Japanese, you can say something like, ここに記入してくれませんか? I will write it down here too. And this basically means when you show your phone, for example, with a translator and a Japanese keyword, you ask them to write down in this translator what they're asking to you. So instead of asking them up front if they can speak English, if you kind of already know they don't speak English, or if they, like, let's say they don't speak English, then you can just say the sentence I just mentioned to you, and they will write it in the translator. And I think this will be a much easier way to have a conversation, even though you're not that fluent in Japanese and maybe the other person is not that fluent in English. Yeah. So if you also want more useful Japanese sentences, I'm making a workbook that will come out in October, 7th October around. And there I gathered useful sentences you can use for going to Japan. Of course, you can take ChatGPT, just like I did right now, but I was in Japan for 1 year. I'm a Japanese student, and I can help you to kind of get around better in Japan. So yeah. So to go back to the next sentences of ChatGPT, we're at number 7 right now. So this sentence is これはいくらですか? And this is a pretty useful sentence. You can use it to say something like, how much is this? When you're at the shop and you want to ask how much the price is. If you cannot find a price at the souvenir you want to buy, for example. Even though I didn't encounter it that often that it's not written, but it's a useful sentence. And before I explain you something about the sentence, let's go to the eighth sentence too, and it's これをください. So give me this, please. And let's first talk about これ. If you learn Japanese a bit, you should know that これ is used for something that you have in your hand right now or that is at your place. And there's also それ and あれ. And what is the difference for those that don't know? So これ is used for something that you have. For example, let's take the example if you're at a shop in Japan and you want to buy, I don't know, let's say chopsticks. You can put them in your hand and show it to the person that's working there and say, これはいくらですか? And he will understand, これ, it's in your hand, how much is it? But for example, if there's something that the person you're talking to is holding, you say, それ. So, それはいくらですか? For example, if you're talking with the person in the shop and they show you something, and then you can ask, how much is this in your hand? So in this case, you use それ. And then there's あれ, and it is used for something that is not in your hands or in the hands of the other person. So, for example, if you're talking to a person in the shop and you want to ask them something about that is a bit far away. For example, if you're standing at the counter and you can see, like, I don't know, you see this plant behind that person and you're talking to me and I'm the person selling something. You can say, あれはいくらですか? So this person will know, it's not his, it's not mine, it's something else. And then you can just point on it and they will know you're talking about something else. So when you talk about some things, keep in mind when to say これ and それ and あれ. And that is the same with ください. So ください is just a word to say please. And これをください means this, please. So for example, when you say これはいくらですか? And they will say to you 1万円. And you can say something like これをください. Then they will know, okay, you want to buy this kind of thing. And the same will be with それ and あれ, like I explained. Now you can just interchange it. So yeah, another thing when you can use これをください is when you're at the restaurant. So everyone knows this. You go to Japan and you go inside some restaurant and you just get like this, like a whole mountain of letters that you cannot understand. And even I myself have trouble sometimes understanding what is written there. For example, when I went to Japan, I was sitting at a restaurant for fish. And I'm from Germany and we don't eat that much fish. So even in German terms, in German words, I don't know what fish this is. So when I'm at the Japanese fish restaurants with like dozens of fishes and they're written in like kanji or Japanese letters, then even I cannot understand often what it is. But in Japan, they often have pictures next to their menu. I will put the picture somewhere here if I find it on my phone. And in this case, you can just say これをください. And because the menu doesn't have to be in your hands, but because it is close to you, in this case, you can use これ too. And you just say, if you see the menu and you see this fish and you think, yeah, it will be tasty, you can say, これをください. And if you want to tell the person how much you want, for example, if you're with a friend of yours and you both want to eat this menu, you can say, これ二つください. So, 2. Or if it's just one, say, 一つ. So they know it's 1 or 2. And yeah, this will be a bit too advanced, but depending on what you're talking about, you have different words to count something. But because you just got to Japan and because this is the most, let's say, simple and the most used way to say 1 or 2, you can say hitotsu for 1 and futatsu for 2. And if you want the other words, I will just put them in the description and you can just see. I will just write it until 10 because I don't know. I don't think people will order more than 10 menus, right? Of the same one. If you need another number, just ask me. I will write it down in the comments, of course. So let's get to the next sentence, and it is the sentence number 9. And you can be proud of yourself. You already learned 8 Japanese sentences. So let's get to number 9. And this is トイレはどこですか? And this is the most, let's say, basic way to ask where the toilet is. So トイレ, if you kind of トイレ, listen to it, it kind of sounds like the English toilet. トイレ, toilet, maybe? So this is actually a word that Japanese took from the English language. And you can use this when you're outside and you want to find a toilet. You can use it when you're in the restaurant and want to ask where the toilet is. For the people that want to ask a bit more advanced, or let's say more polite, you can say 手洗い. 手洗いはどこですか? This is just a more polite word for toilet. Toilet. I just said the Japanese word, yeah, for toilet. And 手洗い is used for, if you translate it, it means hand washing. So if you translate it, where can I wash my hands? And usually you wash your hands at the toilet, so they will know you want to go to the toilet. So either say トイレはどこですか? Or say 手洗いはどこですか? Both is fine, both is used. Just pick the one that you like. And another tip for many people, and another tip that could be important for many people is, of course, when you go to Japan, you want to know where the toilet is. But in case you are shy to ask people or you want to know it up front, the most common places for toilets in Japan are either in konbinis. So nearly every konbini has a toilet. But I noticed when you go to more crowded places, like Tokyo, for example, often they remove the toilets. I think they did it because people didn't treat the toilets good enough, so it was hard for them to always clean it. But if you cannot find a toilet at konbini, another good free option is to go to a department store. Like, you know, those department stores that are often at train stations that go like really high, like skyscrapers. Inside there, you nearly find a toilet on every floor. So for me, always when I needed a toilet, I went to the konbini, and when I couldn't find something, I went to the department store. And also for, let's just say basically for women, I think it's more important to have a clean toilet, or in general, let's just say in general, if you want a more clean toilet, I would advise you to go to a department store and go to the top floors instead of the bottom floors. There you will, in the top floors, you will most likely find more clean toilets, and also more clean toilets than in konbinis. Also, often you have some wipes where you can wash the toilet seat before you use it. That is some really beneficial thing, but just so you know in general about toilets in Japan. So let's get to number 10. And number 10 is 助けてください. So please help me. And in English language and also in German language, you can say please help me, and it has two meanings, right? So if you say please help me like this, it means that you want someone to assist you, right? For example, if you cannot find the way, or if you don't know how to pay, you can ask it. But for example, if I don't know, let's say you're a woman and you're walking alone at night and maybe there's some person following you, you can say, please someone help me. And this is like some different nuance, right? You're in danger. So you have please help me for someone assisting you and please help me for being in danger. And in English and in German, it's the same. But in Japanese, you have two different words actually. So ChatGPT kind of translated it the right way, but it can give people a different impression of what that word actually means. And tasukeru, so you have tasukete kudasai, you have the kudasai from before, that means you want something, and tasukete means helping someone. But the problem with tasukete is that it means to help you because you're in danger or because you cannot do it alone. So, for example, in this case, I would more often use tetsudatte kudasai. So you're trying to do something on your own and you want someone to assist you or to help you right away. So keep in mind this kind of nuance between tasukete, that you're either in danger or you don't know how to do it yourself. You cannot do it at all yourself, or tetsudatte, that someone assists you. So to have this kind of nuance. Just to conclude what I just said about tetsudatte kudasai and tasukete kudasai. So in general, it depends on the degree of help you need. So tetsudatte means you need some kind of assistance or mild help because you need someone to give you a hand, for example. And tasukete really means you cannot do it on your own and it's a really urgent situation. So yeah, just in my expression or in my impression, tasukete feels a bit harsh to me. So kind of like the person needs to come really right now or something bad will happen. So just keep this in mind, how urgent a situation is. Yeah. Let's go to number 11. And number 11 is Michi ni mayoimashita. So I'm lost. And yes, I cannot correct anything with this sentence. It's perfectly fine in itself. But let's say you're really lost. Just saying this will not help you that much. It will just tell someone that you don't know the way. But how do you ask someone to show you the way for some point or something? So, for example, you can say, if you're searching for a special shop you found in the internet, let's say that shop is called, I don't know, Tree Market or something, then you can say something like Tree Market, just say it in English, or just show them the name on your phone or something, and say, Made ni ikitai desu ka? So this just means, and you just leave the ga open. And basically after this you can say something else, but to keep it simple, it means something like, I want to go until there. And if you just leave the sentence open, they will kind of know, okay, you need to know the way. And also to give you some, how to say, context. So I can just say it in comparison to my German country where I was born and raised at. When you ask someone in Germany that you want to go somewhere, they will most likely tell you like, okay, just go straight and left and right and left and so on. And then they will leave you alone. But what I experienced often in Japan is that in this case, Japanese people are really nice. So really often I had it that I asked someone in their like lunch break when they were working, after they were working, and they really went all the way with me to the store. And sometimes I kind of get this feeling like, oh, I'm asking for too much and I don't want to bother people too much. So if you don't want to, let's say, bother a person too much, or bringing a person or letting a person bring you to a faraway place, in this case you can just use Google Maps like everyone else. If it's something that you search on Google Maps and you should be nearby, and it's really not far away from you, but you just cannot find it because sometimes there are like many, how to say, floors, and you don't know which floor, you can maybe ask the person, like I said to you before. So, Tree Market, までに行きたいんですか? And they will already know what you want from there. Also, what I noticed in department stores, often there's an information in the most base floor, in the first floor, and they will also most likely help you to find something. So let's go to sentence number 12. And ChatGPT wrote something like, この近くにレストランはありますか? But I would advise you to use a different grammar structure because to me it just sounds more, let's say, native. So I would say something like, この近くにはいいレストランがありますか? So, この近くにはいいレストランがありますか? So, just to keep the sentence more, how to say, clear or more, in my opinion, more fluent. So, by adding e as a word for good and changing the particles a bit, it sounds a bit more like, is there a good restaurant nearby? Because, I mean, that's what you want to find, right? A good restaurant. So, yeah. So, let's get to sentence number 13. We're already halfway through. So, メニュー見せてください. If you translate it, it means show me the menu. But this is, in my opinion, actually a pretty useless sentence. I'm sorry, ChatGPT. But there's always a menu when you go to a restaurant. Either it's inside an iPad, in a screen, in like an application, or it will be printed on the paper on the desk. So actually you don't need to ask them to show you the menu because it's already there. So let me change that sentence a bit so it will be beneficial to you. And in this way, I would say 英語のメニュー or English menu. You can say both. Let's stay with 英語. So 英語のメニューを見せてください. You can ask them to show you the English menu. So, for example, when you're at a restaurant and they don't have an English menu right on the table, because usually Japanese people will eat more at the restaurant than foreigners, then you can ask them to show you the English menu. And yes, then they will most likely show you the English menu. Or if you kind of can feel in the situation that they're kind of apologizing, so saying something like すみません or 申し訳ありません, then this mostly means they don't have an English menu. And in this case, I would just use my translator app and take a photo of the menu and try to translate it into English, and then just point on the thing I want to have. Like I said before, これをください or これ一つください. And yeah, that's how I would use this sentence or how I would react in this situation. Just to say something in between, because we're now halfway through, if you're listening to this video, maybe you will think, oh God, there's so many things I need to keep in mind. There's so many things I need to watch out for when I'm in Japan. But let me tell you something, and that is, people will understand that you're a foreigner. And people will understand that you will not do everything correct. So it's okay if you do mistakes in Japan. And I myself did countless mistakes in Japan, but in this case, Japanese people are pretty nice. They will forgive you for the mistakes. But I do this video to give you some, how to say, more refined version, what to say in which situation. And also by giving you a bit context, you already know what will happen in a certain situation when you go to Japan. For example, like we talked about restaurants before, or we talked about when you talk to strangers, for example. So yeah, just keep that in mind. Knowing a bit of Japanese, people will already be really grateful for you. Let's go to number 14. And this sentence says, お勘定をお願いします. And this says the check, please. And the word お勘定 means receipt or check, but I didn't really hear this word being used in Japan. So nearly everyone is using 会計. So お会計をお願いします. And お会計 means receipt for your order, to pay. And お願いします means that you want to have it. And yeah, I would just say お会計お願いします. And let's look at the other small thing that can be maybe interesting for you. You may notice that there's a small お in front of 願います, 願いします, and in front of お会計. So お会計のお and お願いしますのお. And basically in Japanese language, to make something more polite, you can put o or go in front of it. Depending on the words, it will be different which, let's say, letter you use. But this is just to make it more polite. And there's some words in Japanese language that already are like this. So for example, no one will say kaike. The word kaike means receipt, but through the, let's say, evolution of Japanese language, it became usual or common to use okaike. Other words, for example, are okane, money, or ocha, tea. And yeah, just keep that in mind if you're confused with some words. And yeah, in this case also, negai shimasu means to ask for something or to want to have something. Let's go to number 15. And this one means credito card o tsukaimasu ka? And it means, do you accept credit cards? Can I use credit cards? And in this case, I want to add another sentence that will be really useful for you. Because if you have a credit card, you know there are two ways to pay with a credit card, right? You put it in the card reader, and if you want to pay like this, you can ask credito card o tsukaimasu ka? Wa tsukaimasu ka? You can also say o. But sometimes, for example, you want to just put the card on the scanner instead of putting it inside and pay like this. So, for example, I don't know, when I went to Japan, I wanted to pay like putting the card on the reader because, I don't know, I was like forgetting about my PIN code, and this was a more easier way to not use my PIN code. And in this case, you can use touch keisai. So tachi, like touch, and keisai. I will put it like somewhere here so you know. And there you can say like touch keisai o tsukaimasu ka? So this means, can I pay by just putting it on the reader, or do I need to input it? So another sentence you can use. And to just keep it complete, maybe sometimes you cannot pay with credit card, and that is pretty often at restaurants, for example, that you cannot use a credit card. So I would advise you to also have cash, and cash in Japanese means genkin. So sometimes they will say something to you like they will say something like genkin and blah blah blah. I don't know, like you can just use genkin. But if you hear the word genkin, you will already know, okay, I can just use cash. And also I would advise you to remember the kanji for genkin and credito cardo, because sometimes you will have to choose it by yourself. So sometimes when you buy something at the kombini, for example, you need to tell them how you want to pay, or you need to type it on a screen, like credit card or Apple Pay or money. So like I said, I would advise you to keep the kanji kind of in mind. Let's go to number 16, and it says yoyaku shiteimasu, and it translates as I have a reservation. This is not wrong, I would say, because it is the state of having a reservation, but because if you say this, then they will ask you at the restaurant again, what is your name? And in this case, you need to say your name. For example, Suzuki desu, the name you made the reservation. To make it even more simpler, you can just say something like your name. Let's say we're Suzuki. You can say Suzuki de yoyaku shimashita. I made the reservation as Suzuki. So they will already know your name. And then maybe they will ask you about the time. And you can say something like yoji desu for 4. So ji means time, and desu means it's just a polite word you put at the end. And then you can just take a number. Like I said before, I will put the numbers in the description, how to count, Hitotsu, Futatsu, and the numbers in general. If you need something else translated into Japanese, just ask me in the comments. I will answer it to you. So the sentence number 17 is, kore o motte kitte kuremasu ka? Can you bring this to me? And this sentence itself doesn't make sense. Because as we learned before, kore means something that you have in your hand. And asking someone to bring you something you already have doesn't make sense, right? So which words can we use? Like we learned before, we can use sore or are. And to make the sentence a bit more simple, just use sore or are. Sore for something that the person you're talking with is holding. Or if you're at a souvenir shop, I would most likely just use are. For example, if you see something at the shelf, like chopsticks, you can say something like, あれを取ってくれませんか? For me, this is a more easier sentence, and this is the one I used the most in Japan when I wanted someone to give something to me. So, あれを取ってくれませんか? Let's go to sentence number 18. So, すぐに食べられるものはありますか? Is there something I can eat right away? I personally didn't use that sentence, but grammatically it sounds okay to me. Just instead of using the verb particle, just use ga. It sounds more natural and it is more grammatically right. So instead of saying すぐに食べられるものはありますか? Just say すぐに食べられるものがありますか? Sentence number 19. どの電車が駅に行きますか? So which train goes to the station? And of course, in the sentence, you need some context, because if you ask a Japanese person about a station, you need to also tell them the name of the station, right? And that is something that ChatGPT didn't write here, but to give you a better sentence, instead of saying, どの電車が駅に行きますか? どの電車が, then your name, for example, 新宿駅までに行きますか? So, どの電車 means which train. が is the subject. どの電車が新宿駅、新宿 station, 東京駅、東京 station, 千葉駅、千葉 station, and so on. までに to the place you want to go. 行きますか goes. And there you have your sentence for which train goes to Shinjuku Station, Tokyo Station, Chiba Station. So sentence number 20 is この住所まで行きたいです. And this means I want to go to this address. It is the same as I explained to you before, like tree market までに行きたいですか? So in this case, you can use it too. I would use までに instead of まで. Sentence number 21. So this one means お土産を買いたいです. So お土産, it is the same O as I explained to you before in お金 or お茶. So to make it more polite. And お土産 is a word that is already written as お土産. No one will say 土産. So just say お土産. O marks the object in your sentence. So in this case, you want to buy 買いたいです. And what is the object that you want to buy? It's an omiyage. And if you want to know where there's an omiyage, you can ask a Japanese person. And to make it even easier, just remember the kanji of omiyage and just input them in Japanese inside your Google Maps. And let's talk about this topic just a bit. And it's about, should you search things in Japanese or can you just search them in English? Because many people will maybe say, but Victor, I can just input it in English and it will show me the ones too. And let me give you some advice that I learned in Japan. So, a restaurant that wants to target foreigners as their customers will, let's say, refine their name of the restaurant with English letters so it's easier to find in English. This can be a good point because the restaurant will maybe have an English menu, but you maybe heard about double pricing in Japan. And double pricing in Japan didn't happen to me because I always had the Japanese menu, but maybe it can happen to you. And in this way, I would kind of watch out for going to restaurants that are really specifically for foreigners, because this can be suspect to scam. So by finding more restaurants or by finding every restaurant that Japanese persons also go, you can just put it in Japanese also to find a more variety of restaurants, because usually you will also find more restaurants. Just so you kind of keep this in mind. I will also do a video about kind of the tourism problem in Japan. But this will come out next week, I think. So yeah, stay tuned. Let's go to number 24. We're done soon. So, どこでタクシーを呼べますか? Where can I call a taxi? 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 I just said the German word, but I hope it's the same in English. But you know what I mean. The car you're riding and someone drives to some place. And you're asking where you can call a taxi. In this case, I would just advise you to download Uber, for example. It is a more easier way to call a taxi without needing to talk Japanese. So just have an application right on your phone. And in this case, you can also ask for どこでタクシーがありますか? And it is the same as you had in the sentences before. があります means where is, and がありますか means where is it as a question. And let me just take a look. We had it before with すぐに食べられるものがありますか? And just to give you a simple explanation about this, あります is used for being that something is somewhere. So for example, タクシーがあります there's a taxi. And for living things like let's say cats or humans and so on, you say います. So 猫がいます there's a cat, or 犬がいます there's a dog. And you can just keep this in mind a bit. I mean, you don't have to remember it, but I just give you some extra context and information for your Japan travel. And let's go to the last explanation. I kind of got shocked because, you know, this clock is doing like bird sounds every hour. I don't know if this is like a German thing or something, but yeah, this kind of shocked me right now. I forgot that there's a bird clock in my room, but anyway, let's go to the last sentence. And it's この辺に観光地はありますか? Like I said before, instead of は use が. この辺に観光地がありますか? So, is there any tourist attractions around here? And in this case, I would just use the word 観光地 and just input it into my phone, and it will show you more better tourist attractions than any Japanese person on the street can tell you. Also, like I said before, I made some other useful sentences too that will come out in my workbook next month, and that are more useful and beneficial than the ones that ChatGPT told me right now. So stay tuned. If not, I think with this video I could give you some good overview of Japanese sentences and how to use them. So the next time you use ChatGPT, just be a bit more precise about how it's used. Keep the sentences in mind I just corrected for you and told you, and then I think there's nothing that then I think that it will be easier for you to go to Japan. And yeah, if you want anything else translated, a different sentence for a certain situation, if you want to know some words in Japanese, just ask me in the comments and I can explain it to you. Of course, you can use dictionaries or ChatGPT, but like I said, sometimes it can be a bit misleading. And always keep in mind, you're a foreigner and people will understand it. So don't get too stressed about going to Japan and maybe making mistakes. It's a human thing to make mistakes. I even made mistakes even filming this video right now, but I hope you can forgive me the same as Japanese people will forgive you in Japan for your mistakes. So yeah, thank you for listening as always. Have a great day. また今度よろしくね。